Las Vegas Fight Shop has 2 locations, one at Fashion Show Mall on the Strip, and the big daddy of MMA stores, the Las Vegas Fight Shop at Miracle Mile behind Planet Hollywood. Carlos Condit, Chris Lieben, Tito Ortiz, and Dominic Cruz were all big winners. The Las Vegas Fight Shop already has their walkout t-shirts in stock. Everything MMA is available at the Las Vegas Fight Shop. Affliction, Bad Boy, Tap Out, and even Stephen Bonner's cool new Trash Talkin' Kids line. It's the Las Vegas Fight Shop at Miracle Mile and Fashion Show, and if you mention ESPN Radio 1100 or TC and the Sunshine Man, you get 10% off your total purchase.
Here's the other question on Fedor, on the mental side of things. Have you heard good things in terms of his training with regards to game planning? Because I think that was the other big issue in the Silva fight. You know, it's one thing to give away like 55 pounds on fight night, but when you go in with just a ridiculously flawed game plan, that has to change too.
Well, and that's the one thing we don't, and I wrote this in my column today, Steve, that we don't know about Fedor. You know, he practices in that remote area, Russia. There's not a lot of media over there. There's not a lot of Americans who are training with him that we can get reports on what he's doing, what he's working on, how he's looking, what he's thinking. And he's been stone-faced all throughout, so you know he offers up very little. So we really don't know in that regard. All we know is what we can surmise by looking at his body, and it looks, you know, you can look at it 2 ways. You know, he got himself back in shape, and he's motivated and reinvigorated and ready to have a nice burst at the end of his career. Or it could be like Muhammad Ali in 1980. Remember when Ali got on the scale to fight Larry Holmes, and everybody said, oh, my God, Ali got it back. You know, the flab was gone, the love handles were gone, and he got destroyed later. So, you know, we don't know which one is Fedor. Did he get it back and rediscover the passion, and is the fire there again, or did he turn out to be like a 1980 Muhammad Ali? We'll see Saturday night.
Great comparison. And Kevin Iolle's back in studio at Steve Cofield. The MMA Insiders, our 1-hour MMA show on Fridays. I think the good recent example in mixed martial arts, I think a lot of us fell victim. Maybe you didn't. I did. Well, probably because I like the guy too, and I wanted to see him do well. But when Chuck Liddell got on the scale and was all shredded up and ripped up, it's like, hey, he's back. The focus is back. He'll be ready in this fight against Rich Franklin. And he had a pretty good fight, but you know, just the conditioning is only one part of it.
I was kidding with Ariel Helwani, our friend from MMA Fighting, on Twitter, and I was, you know, because he had said Fedor is focused, and I said, well, how do you really know from, especially a guy that doesn't speak very much, if any, English?
He looks mean.
You know, how do you know?
Like, he always looked that way. I saw that all week. I was like, yeah, he always looks focused. When has he ever not looked focused?
Right.
He's always been intimidating.
You know, he has that, you know, kind of blank stare, and it gives you that real, you know, so you don't know. And I mean, I think how you find out a guy is focused is by talking to people close to him who've worked with him, and they tell you, you know, for that camp he did this, and for this camp he did twice as much, and that type of thing. That's how you tell the kind of focus he has. And really, we don't have a lot of evidence. All we see is that belly, that waistline that looks better. So that's a good sign. If you're a Fedor fan, it's definitely a good sign. But we need more evidence to make a conclusive determination. I don't think you can say he's focused just because he weighs 223 instead of 230.
The big card is in Chicago tomorrow. It's on Showtime. Fedor against Hendo. I want to get to the Henderson side here in a second. If you were the Fedor camp, right? If Kevin Iole is the trainer, sorry, I laughed at that. But you know the fight game. What's the game plan? How do you beat, with the tools that Fedor can offer, how do you beat Henderson?
Well, to me, I think, you know, what he's going to want to do, number one, is I think if he can, you know, land that right hand. Now, it's a dangerous proposition because Dan Henderson himself has a pretty good right hand. But I think, you know, what he needs to do is probably try to close a, you know, distance where he doesn't have to worry about getting taken down. You know, he doesn't want to be at a range where Henderson can shoot, double leg him, pop him on the ground, and, you know, push him up against the cage and start ground and pounding him. I think, you know, if Fedor can have the distance closed where it's a difficult spot for Henderson to shoot on him, and then he can land the right hand, kind of try to use his size on Henderson, and then if he can grapple with him after that point, maybe go for a submission. I think then that's a good move. But I would be wary if I was Fedor of just trying to stand at a normal boxing distance and trade right hands with Dan Henderson.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you. I would not stand there at a distance and trade big shots. You know, he's been blasted a few times lately. Fedor, his defense is not very good either. He gets a little lazy with his striking. I'd want to use my size, and I know you're kind of playing into Hendo's strength, but you have a 16-pound weight advantage. if Fedor could fight at heavyweight at 230, he's got to be freakishly strong. I want to get it to the cage, and I want to try to get on top. Like you said, the other thing is you don't want to be at a distance to allow Hendo to get on top of you, and then work your submission game. That is, if the dude's got an Achilles heel, Kevin, Dan Henderson, it's on the ground at times against elite submission fighters. And, don't forget, I know Fedor's won a lot of his big fights in recent years with, spectacular knockouts, but he is freaking vicious on the ground.
Yeah, I don't know. Dan gets, the older he gets, the better he gets for some reason. He's pushing 41, but he just keeps getting tougher and tougher.
It's crazy. You've rolled with Dan. What's it like?
Strongest guy I've ever tied up with. Like, I really felt like I was grabbing onto, like, a tree or something. He's just, I've sparred with him, I've wrestled with him, and he defies age. He's like, I don't know, man, he's a monster.
He's freakishly tough, too. I know he got rocked in the Anderson-Silva fight, although he wasn't, right in that fight, and he wound up getting submitted, but he really has never been close to being knocked out in all these fights.
Oh, he's never been knocked out. Now, he's been submitted a couple times, which I think is what Fedor is looking for in this fight, but never been really seriously hurt. Even, he fought Fejao a couple months back, and he got dropped in that fight, but he said, I talked to him today, he said, he hurt me, I felt it, but I never lost it. I saw him running at me, and I knew to take him down.
It's showtime. It's Saturday night at Strikeforce in Chicago. The main event on a very good card is Fedor against Dan Henderson. So have you had a chance to spend any time? Have you been around Fedor?
Yeah, I was hanging out
this week.
I was hanging out with him today.
Yeah.
I got to say, he's looking leaner than he was last time.
Okay.
Always very focused, always very stoic, shares very little, but there's a hungry look in his eye, and he keeps, we ask him if he's hungry for this fight. He just laughs at us, saying he's never gone into a fight hungry. But there's definitely a different feeling about him right now.
I mean, he doesn't speak like that. He's a very philosophical guy.
Yeah, for him, everything's in God's hands. And I'm like, well, what about your hands? He says, well, my hands are guided by God. But, the beauty of Fedor is he's good at all, the aspects of MMA. He can do submissions, ground, everything he really excels at. That's why he put 27 wins together in a row against the best heavyweights in the world. It's never been done before. And only since he's met the creme de la creme, the Strikeforce, we got all the greatest heavyweights in the world. Only since he's met the Anderson Silvas, the Bigfoot Silva, that he's really met giant athletes with super athleticism. And, he's lost 2 in a row, so there's kind of a feeling like, he really needs this win, and you can see that hunger in his eye.
Henderson's awesome, but if Fedor loses the fight, I'm not going to say it's a bad loss. It doesn't look great. I mean, this is a fight he really has to win reputation-wise when he's fighting a guy who's going to weigh in at, 206 pounds.
Yeah, he's got to beat, Henderson, not only because Henderson's older, but in MMA, it's 3 strikes and you're out. Yep. I mean, that's kind of how the fans feel. That's even as a fighter. When I lost my 2, I've never lost 2 in a row. When I lost 2 in a row, I really started thinking, hey, maybe this is the end for me, and maybe I should hang it up. And I did end up hanging up. But when you lose 3 in a row, people just, they're done with you.
Yeah, Frank Shamrock's working with Showtime. He's getting ready for Fedor and Henderson. It's on Showtime on Saturday. If you have the satellite, you get the early feed. Otherwise, you're going to do the East-West time slot thing. So Fedor reportedly is making nice money for this fight. He's making roughly $1.5 million, and he's gotten that payday the last couple of times out. If he lost the third fight and he was out of Strikeforce, and there'd be other people who'd want him to fight if he wanted to fight on, do you think he would fight for a nice salary? I mean, I know it's not about money, but if he was offered $200,000 to fight somewhere, would he still want to fight with 3 straight losses?
I don't know. I mean, we asked him the hard question today. If you lost, would you retire? And then further, we asked him, because when he lost last time, he talked about in the ring publicly, maybe I'm going to retire now. Maybe this is it. And, what's interesting about him, and something we don't hear from American athletes, is he really is fighting for his country and fighting for his church. And he told us point blank, after the fight, I was beat up, I was tired, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was what was in my head, and that was, maybe it's time for me to stop. But then he went on to say, when I went home and I talked to my preacher and I talked to my family and I talked to my team, they said, you're not ready yet. So I think he's just going to keep soldiering on. Granted, those big paydays are hard to get. He's making a fortune in MMA right now. But, who knows what's behind him and driving him, and who knows where he'll end up.